Hello and welcome to today's presentation, Brewing Up Energy Savings. Before we get started, let's just review a few housekeeping items. Audio is available for this presentation through your computer's mic and speakers. Please make sure to select the computer audio option on your go-to control panel. All attendees have been muted to minimize background noise. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it into the questions box on the upper right-hand side of your screen. We will have a dedicated time to answer questions at the end of the presentation. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please contact us and we will try to troubleshoot the issues. A recording of this presentation will be available at a later date. So now we'd like to get a little bit of information from our attendees today before we get started. All right, so on your screen, you'll see we're asking, where are you joining us today from? So the Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, Southwest, or West. All right, we still have a few people voting, so we'll just wait a few more seconds. All right, we'll go ahead and close the poll. All right, so we have most of our participants today from the Northeast at 33%, 22% Southeast, 19% Midwest, 17% West, and 9% Southwest. All right, so we'll go ahead and go to our next poll question. So in what sector do you operate? Brewing, energy sustainability program operator? Are you from a nonprofit, an NGO, government, or other? Just wait a few more seconds for people to get their votes in. All right, we'll go ahead and close that poll. And it looks like we have 29% work in government, followed by 20% at other, 25% of you work in the energy sustainability program operator sector, followed by 11% brewing, and then 7% are NGO. So thank you so much for participating in that. We do appreciate your feedback. With that, I'm going to pass things over to our first speaker today, Kaylin Kirkpatrick. The presenter, Kaylin. So Kaylin is the Technical Projects Coordinator from the Brewers Association. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Let me just share my presentation with you. Give me 1 second here. Okay, can everybody see that all right?
Looks good, thanks.
All right, thank you. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to the EPA for organizing this and for all the attendees here for tuning in with us. I know that your time is valuable and really appreciate the time you spend with us today. So as already mentioned, my name is Kaylin Kirkpatrick, and I work at the Brewers Association as a Technical Projects Coordinator. If you're not familiar with our organization, we serve to protect and promote American craft beer and craft breweries. And in the technical arm of our organization, we really focus on things like quality, safety, and sustainability. So today I'll be speaking to that last one. So I'll talk about a little bit about what sustainability means for craft brewers and some of the resources at the Brewers Association that can help you along in your journey if you are a brewer, or if you are one of those energy professionals who just like to understand a little more what the needs and challenges are for brewers. You'll get some of those resources highlighted today. And I do want to preface this talk. I know it is a very challenging time with the pandemic for some of our brewers who are operating their businesses and really trying to prioritize sustainability. We have limitations that already exist, right, in our understanding of what sustainability is and how to go about making those improvements in your business. We have limitations around the time it takes to do so, and of course, the dollar investment. But we're hoping that for at least some of us during COVID, maybe we have a little bit more time available to assess what improvements are out there and what opportunities exist in the world of sustainability. So when we talk about sustainable beer, there are many, many hallmarks to this. But I'd like to use this example for the purpose of today's discussion, and we'll look at this around the scope of what it takes to brew the perfect pint of beer. Now, ultimately, we want that beer to be of high quality, and we want to produce it in a way that is profitable for that business. But we also want to do a number of other things: minimize natural resource use, protect our supply chain, our hops and our malts and the other good ingredients we use, and just enhance our image as responsible brewers. So there's really a lot of goals involved in producing a sustainable beer. Ultimately, that beer, though, needs to be produced at market price or below and at market quality or above. If your business fails, it's not sustainable. So I know some of you are professionals in sustainability fields, and so this might be review, but for those who are not, I just wanted to briefly go through what some of these tenets are in sustainable practices. So we really have a synergy of economic, environmental, and social benefits. And the sweet spot is that perfect pint. So first, I just want to talk about economic benefits briefly. This has to do with your long-term profitability as a business owner. And one way to go about that, right, is increasing your revenue and reducing the cost of goods sold. You can save costs through more efficient production practices. And I'll touch on this a little bit when we start talking about benchmarking. Now, this is also a marketing opportunity for brewers and business owners. And you shouldn't be afraid to tell that sustainability story. A lot of effort goes into making these changes in your business, and there are consumers who will really, really appreciate that. There's also, of course, environmental benefits. Mainly, we're talking about reducing utilities and waste. And these solutions will differ based on the brewery's availability, you know, what their capital is, what their scale of production is like. But more and more, we're seeing sustainable solutions and technology for our smaller and craft brewers. So I'm really excited to see what other new technologies will be coming around the bend. But we do have a lot of environmental benefits that are directly impacting breweries. CO2 is a greenhouse gas. Brewers use a lot of CO2 and they generate a lot of CO2. So there's definitely an opportunity there. As well as water availability and how we use and treat our water and our wastewater. We use a lot of water in the brewing process. The ultimate goal here is a lighter environmental footprint, which will help us succeed in our sustainability goals and is something that our consumers will really appreciate as well. So the last kind of tenet here is the social benefits. And I definitely don't want to skip over this because it's a very, very important message that can drive success in so many other areas and really get your whole staff, your entire company on the same page about what your sustainability goals are. The social benefits could include attracting and retaining the best employees and creating a culture in a workplace that people want to show up at day in and day out. It's going to tell consumers that you're doing the right thing, and those consumers who appreciate that will become loyal patrons of your business. And craft breweries are an integral part of communities, and just being a part of that community, supporting your other local businesses, can really have a lot of impact. So these social benefits, I want to stress the importance of them, because no matter what your scale of operation, this is something that is easily attainable to any size brewery. So I'm going to dive into some of the resources that we have at the Brewers Association and just walk you through that really quickly. So this is what I'm showing you now is a page on our website, ba.brewersassociation.org. And this is a resource hub where you can find a lot of information on many different topics. But I'm going to draw you to the sustainability section. We have plenty of resources here, and the first one I would like to talk about today is benchmarking. And this tool is really what I would say is the first step. For those of you who are brewers on the call today who are looking at embarking on this sustainability journey, or otherwise just looking at how to improve your efficiencies in your production facility. So benchmarking is all about tracking your usage data to see where you stand, how it compares to others in your peer group, and maybe make improvements if you have that opportunity. So you have to know what you produce in order to reduce, right? So who else is participating in this? Well, we have over 550 member breweries who are participating in benchmarking with the Brewers Association. And if you're interested in getting involved and learning more about that, it's really simple. When you go to our website, there's a sign-up form, and you'll be able to download this tool. So it's as simple and straightforward as using an Excel spreadsheet, and it produces useful information year over year as you enter your data. So here's an example of what that might look like. So the data entry is meant to be very easy. We have pre-selected high cost impact metrics, things like water usage, natural gas, electricity, solid waste, and wastewater. And these are all, of course, normalized to that particular brewery's production numbers. So it doesn't make sense to compare your brewery to 110 times the size of that, where they would have a lot more efficiency and scale. So it's as easy as popping in your monthly utility bill. And what you can do is set goals and enter monthly targets when you're ready. And the dashboard for each category can show your trends and what you're using every month and over time every year. So you'll get a progress report monthly. You can set targets about where you want to be and track those on a monthly basis. And key here is it also reports how you're saving money. So the money that you're saving from making those improvements. This scatter plot is really interesting. So brewers who participate in the benchmarking tool and in this program can compare how they're doing against other breweries in the same peer group. So when you're looking at this scatter plot, that is data collected over time for water usage and water cost, and that red dot would be your brewery. So you can kind of see where you fall amongst all of the others. So at this point, you're either really, really happy because you're meeting or exceeding your goals, or you find that there's still room for improvement. So the benchmarking tool is a really, really great first step to understand what areas of improvement there are and where you currently stand. And I do want to stress that this effort, it takes time, but it will affect your bottom line. You will see cost reduction. So for example, a 5,000 barrel a year brewery showing a strong commitment to benchmarking saw an average annual cost savings of over $20,000 compared to other breweries in our 5-year benchmarking report. So those are some real dollars saved through this effort. So once you embark on this journey and play around with the benchmarking tool as a first step, that'll let you know where you stand. But then you might want to go towards a certain sustainability goal, and that can be challenging. So I do just want to highlight that we have plenty of other resources to help along the way. After you get an idea of where you stand and where you want to be, excuse me. So some of these resources include sustainability manuals, everything from energy use to solid waste disposal, recycling, wastewater management. There will be toolkits, visuals, best practices. We even have pre-recorded online presentations that walk through some of these things. So tons and tons of information here if that is the next logical step for you. I'm really excited to hear Pat talk about case studies from actual breweries later, because I feel like that is so important and relevant for us to kind of see what works for some and what doesn't work for others. The other thing I will mention is we have a sustainability mentor at the Brewers Association. So at any point in your sustainability journey, if you have questions or issues, please reach out to us. I've included a link to our email specifically for the benchmarking program. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this, if you're excited and you're ready to jump in, please contact us. We'd be happy to help you in that next step. And with that, I will just say thank you for having me. I would be happy to answer any questions you have at the end of today's presentation. And with that, I think I'll hand it off to Danny to talk about the treasure map, which is another great step in reaching your sustainability goals, particularly after you've gotten a sense of where you currently stand. So I'm excited to hear what Danny has to say about that.
Great, thank you so much, Kaylin. Yeah, as she mentioned, we're going to move on to Danny. So Danny McCry is a sector manager for EPA's Energy Star program. So thanks for joining us today, Danny.
Thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
All right, perfect. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Danny McCry and I am with the US EPA's Energy Star program. Just want to thank Caitlin. That was a great presentation. I want to reiterate, I think when you're starting to look to manage energy and improve, really the first thing to do is to benchmark your performance, know where you stand. So definitely would encourage people to take advantage of those resources. And once you have an idea of where you stand, you're primed to start identifying savings opportunities. And I'm going to talk about that today through our Brewery Treasure Map. But first, I just want to mention today is also Energy Star Day. So I'd like to thank our Energy Star partners on the call and also any organizations that are finding ways to save energy during these challenging times. So today I'm going to talk about our energy treasure map for breweries. The treasure map lists different low cost and no cost opportunities to find energy and through that cost savings in your breweries. The treasure map can be used as a standalone checklist, or it can be incorporated into a treasure hunt, which is a more involved process for finding energy savings. So even though this is an Energy Star resource, a lot of people really had their hands in helping develop this, which I think is going to result in a very thorough and useful resource to the industry. So first, I just want to acknowledge and thank the Brewers Association and Efficiency Vermont who are on the call, who helped review this guide. This idea for an energy treasure map also came about from two of my colleagues in the US EPA's pollution prevention program. They saw that Energy Star, which is in a different part of the agency, didn't have any treasure maps for breweries. We have it for different offices. So they really worked with us and took the lead on creating this. So thank you guys. But first, why do you want to care about energy at all? So Kaylin talked a little bit about this. And to start with, energy is a big cost of your operations. In 2017, the brewing industry spent over $300 million on energy-related costs. $300 million, that's a lot of beer. And if you conduct a treasure hunt, a lot of our partners who have conducted treasure hunts have found around 10% energy savings. So 10% of 300 million, $30 million, those are some easy energy and cost savings that are out there. Secondly, by reducing your energy, you're also reducing your air pollution and emissions. So when you're using those kilowatt hours to chill your water, or you're combusting natural gas to heat the water, that's resulting in air emissions and money. And finally, you guys don't need to know this, but working on improving your energy footprint, it's going to improve your sustainability. And we know that a lot of customers, especially craft breweries that are small, really want to improve their footprint with the communities. So you may be catching on a theme through here. That Energy Star really likes treasure hunts. So my question for you guys is, what do Pirates and Energy Star have in common? Well, the answer is we both like treasure hunts and searching for jewels. So Pirates like the jewels with the EW, Energy Star the jewels with the OU. And I guess one of the good things about being on a webinar is if this joke falls on deaf ears, I won't be able to hear that. So treasure hunts, what are treasure hunts? So treasure hunts are really a fun and dynamic way to find low cost and no cost savings in your plants, and at the same time building a culture of energy efficiency. This photo over here comes from our partners at Bristol Myers Squibb. They conducted a treasure hunt a few years ago, and they thought it would be fun to dress up as a pirate while doing that. So treasure hunts are usually 1 to 3 day events. Part of that takes place on a non-production day. A lot of manufacturers find energy saving opportunities when you're actually not producing something, so we encourage that. Treasure hunts are also conducted mostly by internal staff. You can bring in folks from the outside to help with this, and it also involves decision makers. So some people may be asking, maybe thinking that a treasure hunt really just sounds like a rebranded energy audit or lean project. And to some degree it is, but there are some key distinctions between treasure hunts and audits. So first is the tone. Over the last 10 years, we've heard from multiple companies that simply using the term treasure hunt is a lot less threatening to employees than coming in and saying, we're going to do an audit. So by calling it a treasure hunt, you can get a lot of people excited about finding opportunities rather than problems. Second, as I mentioned, it involves plant staff, people who know the processes the best. And because treasure hunts are focusing on the operational and behavioral opportunities, plant staff are key for identifying those areas. So you obviously do need someone to run the treasure hunt. This person can be someone from the outside who has done a treasure hunt before. It's not required, but this person's role is mainly as a facilitator. They may be an expert in some equipment, but their role is to really help people discover the savings opportunities rather than an auditor who's going to maybe point fingers. And one of the key things that have made treasure hunts effective is that you have the participants report directly to management your results rather than having your management receive this report a few weeks later. And this creates accountability. The participants tell management we want to do this, that creates accountability on them. And if management's interested, that creates accountability for them to provide the resources. So Energy Star has a ton of resources to help with treasure hunts. They range from videos of actual treasure hunts to planning how you conduct them to calculators and case studies. And I could talk about a lot of these, but I do want to focus on the treasure maps. So if you don't have a background in energy or you're not an expert with a bunch of knowledge on the equipment in your brewery, one of the most tangible things to have with you is a map, something to give you an idea of what to look for. So we have these energy treasure maps for a bunch of sectors, including microbreweries, which we released a few months ago. So the brewery map is a several-page PDF document that you could download and print. It's broken up into different sections based on the energy systems in your plant. So it's going to start off with the brewery and production equipment sections, and then it's going to go into support equipment like hot water, chilled water, refrigeration, and so on. And then if your brewery has a brew pub, we're also going to have some information on kitchens and other building systems. So even though treasure hunts focus mainly on low cost upgrades, we were going back and forth with this when we were putting this document together on whether we want to include some capital opportunities as well. And we did, because we know some people who are doing a treasure hunt may want to look for that. So within the treasure map, there are, I think, over 100 best practices, 100 savings opportunities you could do to save energy and money in your brewery. So this guy over here was on a treasure hunt, but he got distracted in the brew pub, so didn't quite make it. But if you complete the treasure hunt and you complete the map, you'll see that that there are a lot of great opportunities. This slide over here gives you a few examples of things that you'll find. So for low-cost upgrades, for example, some things involve checking thermal processes, checking your brew kettles, your mash tuns for insulation damage. If you're bottling in your plant, an opportunity would be to see if you have automatic stop controls to avoid idle running. Another thing for refrigeration, this is an easy one. It could be going in and making sure that you don't have anything that's blocking the vents or the evaporators. And then again, if you are interested in some capital investment upgrades, we do have recommendations like assessing opportunities for waste heat recovery. So that in a nutshell is the treasure map. The link is going to be in the presentation, so we encourage people to go ahead and download it and use it. And I know that from the beginning, a lot of folks who are on this call are NGOs, government organizations, or they are energy efficiency program operators. So if that's you, you could also have an opportunity to co-brand this treasure map with your logo. So Efficiency Vermont did this, but over 90% of the American public recognize the Energy Star brand, but a lot of people, especially your customers, are more familiar with your brand and logo. So this gives an opportunity to put this out to them. All that you have to do for this is just send us your high-res image, your URL, and why you want to partner with us on co-branding this, and we'll put everything together and give you a PDF document that you could distribute. So I feel like one of the elephants in the room is, how would you conduct a treasure hunt during a pandemic? I mentioned that treasure hunts are a great opportunity to bring people together. It's a lot harder to do nowadays. So some of our partners have actually conducted treasure hunts, but have modified them to allow for some virtual treasure hunting. And we do have a resource on our website on how people are doing that if you're interested. So after you do a treasure hunt, you identify energy saving opportunities. You may be thinking, well, now what can you do? Well, there are two things. So the first thing is you could get recognition for conducting a treasure hunt through our Find the Treasure campaign. And if you're actually able to reduce your brewery's energy intensity by 10% or more, you can get recognition through our Challenge for Industry program. So the Find the Treasure campaign, in 2019 and 2020, over 140 treasure hunts were conducted across, I think it was about 35 organizations, and they found a lot of energy and cost savings. So they found nearly $38 million in energy cost savings. And if you go to our website, the link at the bottom, you could actually see the organizations that participated, how much they saved, and some things that they did. So if you're interested in getting recognition for a treasure hunt that you did, or something like a treasure hunt, all that you need to do is go to our website, submit some information about the treasure hunt, when it was, where it was, the top 3 things, energy saving things that you found, and you could get recognition, which would be a certificate, and you'd get featured on the Energy Star website. And if you're not a brewery, but again, and I'm sorry, these slides are going automatically, so I need to toggle back. If you are a government organization or an efficiency operator, we actually do have some really great resources to promote treasure hunts to your clients or your constituents. This again includes some opportunity for co-branding. And if you are able to work with your clients on conducting treasure hunts, you guys could get recognition as well. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with today is if you do benchmark your savings, you do a treasure hunt, and you reduce your energy intensity by 10% or more within a 5-year period, you can get recognition from EPA for saving energy and reducing your emissions. So the way this works is you would create a baseline, and again, Kaylin had some good resources for this. You would create a baseline. You would register that baseline with Energy Star, and this baseline could be energy per barrel of beer. And then you would track your energy over time. And once you reduce your intensity by 10% or more, that site is a challenge achiever. They will get a certificate from EPA. They will get a letter to their CEO congratulating them. It's not often that manufacturers will get congratulatory letters from EPA, so this is a great opportunity. And the site will also be on our, and your site will also be on our Energy Star website. There's no penalty for not meeting the reduction target, so I would encourage folks to do this. And we actually had our first brewery, Bell's Brewery, who achieved the challenge recently, and we'd love to see some more participants. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions about the treasure hunt or our program, I'd be glad to answer them at the end or through email. And with that, I think we're going to hand it over to Ed and Pat from the state of Vermont. You've heard about treasure hunts, what they are, and they're going to share some really great case studies of breweries that conducted them. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Danny. So our next speakers are Ed Anczak and Pat Haller. Pat is a senior energy consultant from Efficiency Vermont, and Ed is a program manager from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. Thanks for joining us today, Pat and Ed.
Welcome. I'm not sure what people can see right now.
We can see the presentation, but it's not in presentation mode.
Oh, pardon me. How's that?
There we go. Looks good.
Okay, great. My speaker notes aren't there though. Do you still see the presentation?
Yes, it's just not in presentation mode.
Darn it. Pardon me, everyone. There we go. All right. I think we're in presentation mode now.
Great. Well, I'm going to kick it off for a little bit. My name is Ed Anczak. I'm, again, program manager for the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. And our work with breweries began back in 2016, I think. Goes back that far. And we had been receiving pollution prevention grants from EPA. And in 2018, 2019, we received a 2-year grant working with the food and beverage sector. And in the second year of our grant, we decided to look at the efficiency of our technical assistance provision to companies, and made a determination that I think that we thought that there would be a more efficient way to sort of approach staff time. And with the limited staff that we had, we came upon an idea that we would build a cohort model and sort of move away from the traditional single visit technical assistance approach. The cohort model was kind of innovative for us. It involved ongoing technical assistance to a committed group of businesses within a certain sector. And in the first pilot case, it was just breweries, which allowed for peer-to-peer resource development, sector-specific pollution prevention recommendations. And the goal of the model was to enroll up to 10 businesses in a cohort. So as it turns out, the brewers were not resistant to the idea, and we, I think, got 6 or 7 to sign up in the first cohort in the pilot year of 2019. And what we tried to do is on our most recent grant, 2018 and 20, we expanded and included not only brewers in a cohort model, but dairy producers, primarily cheese makers, and also specialty foods producers in Vermont. And the idea in the second grant, after we piloted the first year in the previous one, was we wanted to prove that it was effective, it was scalable and replicable in the 2 new sectors that we added. So this model kind of hit one of the bells on the EPA side of amplification. So when you're dealing with a single visit approach, it's sort of like, you know, you go to a facility, you leave the facility, and whatever happens in there is kind of self-contained. It's hard to spread that information around. When you have a cohort of 5, 6, 7 businesses, or maybe even up to 10 who are working together, get to know each other, have signed commitment letters that they're going to achieve specific targets, et cetera, that peer-to-peer learning kicks in. People get comfortable with each other, they share ideas, they solve problems together. It's a whole different approach, and it really was amazing how collegial the businesses are when you really get them in that sort of atmosphere. So the cohort model, we provided tailored programming that addressed environmental compliance issues, sustainability opportunities, and we're looking for realistic solutions that were relevant for that sector. We had hoped that this approach would strengthen that sector-wide capacity for creative problem solving, leverage the experience of businesses to help each other, and that's an effect that can go well beyond the formal cohort grant period. Case in point, in Vermont, one of our cohort members, I think it was Hermit Thrush Brewery, one of the sustainability coordinator for that brewery was also on the state Brewers Association, and he was wondering whether or not, after this grant was over, whether the Department of Environmental Conservation would still be committed to doing these cohort models. And as it turns out, that he was right. We are not. We moved on to other priorities, but he had formed a sustainability committee in the State Brewers Association, and he wanted to make sure that things that were being uncovered and the peer-to-peer resource and networking opportunities would remain there for not only existing brewers, but for new brewers who are entering that sector. So each participating business in the cohort received on-site technical assistance on pollution prevention. They all got a best management practice toolkit. There were regular opportunities for peer-to-peer networking. There were access to community partners like Efficiency Vermont and Pat, who will speak after me, and also sustainability consulting. The duration of the cohort typically is 12 months, followed by a 6 to 12 month follow-up to measure impact. And much like Kaylin was talking about in her presentation, we are very much interested in measurability, and each business was required to set up a tracking system. And it's not unlike what Kaylin has showed as an Excel spreadsheet, where they tracked water use, energy use, wastewater generation, toxics use, solid hazardous waste generation, et cetera. So that was actually a requirement, and also a requirement because EPA wants to see those metrics at the end of the grant period. So by building source reduction and sustainability and systematic performance tracking using standard metrics for these businesses, the extended technical assistance also drives regulatory compliance, which is another goal for EPA. So our grant and the cohort model so far has produced significant environmental outcomes. It has created a scalable and replicable model for other businesses to follow in other sectors. Case in point, our new EPA grant that we just received, which will be 20 to 22, the next 2 years, we are moving away from the food and beverage sector and have gone on to emerging contaminants and per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, which you may have heard about, in the metal, plater, and aerospace sectors in Vermont. So we're looking at using the cohort model of those business sectors to track PFAS back down through the wastewater treatment plants, ultimately into biosolids that get spread on fields and could end up in surface waters in the state. So we're moving that model, excuse me, into a different cohort, but our time working with brewers has been very successful. and very appreciated. And one of our most important community partners has been Efficiency Vermont, which is our state energy efficiency utility. And they do, I'll let Pat describe what Efficiency Vermont is, but they have been a tremendous partner. And I would recommend any governmental offices who are working in the food and beverage sector to look for energy partners or outside partners who can help these businesses improve their operations. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Pat to continue the slide presentation and talk about his work with brewers in Vermont.
Thanks, Ed. Let's see, we're going to move forward a little bit. Hi, my name is Pat Haller. Oh, sorry about the window behind me. You don't need to see my face too much, so let's just stick. I'm going to turn my webcam off, but you should still be able to see my presentation. So as Ed said, that Efficiency Vermont was working with Ed and the Department of Environmental Conservation on the cohort model. I myself have participated in many treasure hunts, not just breweries, and the cohort model seems to be one of the best means of getting the most out of the treasure hunt. I think an idea that just popped into my head is if you're interested in creating a cohort model to do treasure hunts in breweries, your state or area brewers association, most of them now have a sustainability committee, and I'm sure your sustainability committees in the brewers associations would enjoy starting some treasure hunts amongst their peers. My job is essentially a coordinator or facilitator for energy treasure hunts. Like I said, I've done treasure hunts for multiple different industries, brewing being one of them. So with that, I want to go through how we've conducted treasure hunts, who's on a treasure hunt team, what are the things you might look for, where to start. I'll spend the bulk of the presentation on some examples of what had been found, and then I want to make sure that you know what resources are out there for you. So who's on the team? You can see we did a treasure hunt several years ago at Harpoon Brewery in Windsor, Vermont. It's quite a large team, but what was fun about this team is that we have at least 4 different breweries represented that came to Harpoon and helped Harpoon find some very cost-effective, low-cost, no-cost opportunities. But first off, you need buy-in and a sponsor from upper management. They need to be part of this, not just say, oh, that's a good idea, you go ahead and do it. You want them to be part of it and be at the end of the treasure hunt to listen to the presentations and understand the savings. It's very helpful to have the head brewer and operations staff. You need someone from maintenance, because you do need to poke and prod on stuff. You need to turn things on and off, maybe open up some panels. So you may even need an electrician. It's great to have someone from accounting or finance to be in the treasure hunt with you. That not only helps the buy-in, but also they can act as the 5-year-old that you need in the back that says, why do you do it that way? Let's question assumptions. Do we need to run the compressor the way we run the compressor? Having external peers is extremely helpful in the treasure hunt, but also it was a lot of fun to listen to the different brewers talk about the different products they use. We got into a tangent on different glues to use, and one had been thinking about using a specific glue, didn't know whether or not they should use it, and the other brewer spoke up and said, we've been using it for years and it's been extremely good for us, so don't worry about that glue. So that peer-to-peer relationship will endure. It'll go beyond the treasure hunt. And then your local utility reps here in Vermont, Efficiency Vermont, Burlington Electric Department and Vermont Gas Systems are here ready, willing to help. Your states and regions utilities will also be willing to help and possibly have the likes of me who can help facilitate. What are you asking? Well, you can maybe bring it down to just 4 questions. Remember, you're looking for low cost, no cost items during a treasure hunt. So can you shut it off? Are there fans running? Let's say fans today might be running to cool a space, but it's no longer warm outside. So let's turn those fans off. Can you tune it up? There's some leaks. Let's fix the leaks, change air filters. Can you make it routine? This might be if you're going to change the setting on the compressor, don't make it the change and then expect it to stick. Write out a sequence of operations, maybe put a sign on the compressor saying set it 100 PSI, or on the brew chiller, let's set it at 26 degrees Fahrenheit, no lower. So stick with it, make it a routine. And then can you make an investment in it? We all might be thinking, well, we could put LEDs into the facility. That's a capital upgrade. That usually comes up as a good idea, but it's not necessarily a low cost, no cost, but let's get it in there. So the impact pyramid, this is just an example or a reference of what is the impact that each of these different hierarchies can provide for the savings. The bottom of the pyramid is the one that I focus on the most, and that is the employee engagement. If the employees are engaged, they're working there day in, day out. They know how the stuff runs. They know how to make it sing. They can give you great advice. They can come up with great ideas, and they're the ones that can make it stick. So I don't want to spend much on the rest of the pyramid because it's the employee engagement that I find the most compelling and fun. Your employees enjoy making a difference in their workplace. So again, the 4 quick questions: can you shut it off? Can you tune it up? Fix the leaks? Can you make it routine? Here's one where a seller has a couple exhaust fans that run on CO2 sensors, and by putting signage on here, we know that that's the CO2 sensor for the exhaust fan, and don't turn it off. And can you make an investment in it? There's lots of rebates that might be available from your local utilities, whether it's on boilers or your chillers or your evaporators, refrigeration system in your walk-ins. And then after the treasure hunt or during the treasure hunt, you may look to prioritize. So if it's a low cost, low impact, that might be something you can do within the next several days. It's an easy win. If it's low cost but high impact, it's a big win. If it's a high cost, high impact project, then it's a capital project that you might invest in, and it makes a lot of sense to begin working on it now. And then some high cost, low impact, those things might be something you look into doing later. Again, during a treasure hunt, you want all the ideas and don't throw them out of hand after the treasure hunt. You start prioritizing and figuring out when to do them. But if it's an easy or big win, do them as soon as possible. So I'm going to go through some examples. But first, where do you start? So as Caitlin was suggesting, starting at the benchmarking tool might be a very smart move, because then you can track your savings, track your progress throughout the process. Also, Efficiency Vermont is a member of the Brewers Association, and I've used their website to find some of their technical resources. And then, thank goodness for Energy Star for coming out with the treasure map. As a facilitator, almost always the first question you'll get is, well, what are we looking for? Well, this treasure map is what you're looking for. it can really help be the barometer for you to understand what sorts of things you're going to be looking for and finding in the brewery. So the next 5 slides, we're going to go through some real world examples of treasure hunts that I've conducted with others at facilities here in Vermont. So the first might be a great idea to ask your local utility for your power data. Some of us have the luxury here in Vermont, we can get 15-minute interval data. In New York State, I know you can get 1-hour data from multiple utilities. But if you have smart meters in your state, you can often ask the utility to give you some historic data. And here's some historic data that shows hourly kW every day of the year. And what I want to point out is that you can see that there's production happening where we're spiking up to 200 kW. But this is every day of the year. The operations is Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30 p.m. What is going on here? The plant never shuts down below about 70 kW every day, night, weekends, whereas production is Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30. So that's a good thing to pull out as your utility data and start asking, well, what could be happening? Well, one thing we know for sure is happening is that we've got to keep the beer cold. So our chiller is still working to keep the bright tanks cold. We still have walk-in coolers that might be holding all of your product. But in this case, only 15 kW was associated with those pieces of equipment. The rest were lights, and those lights were on 24/7, and it was costing this brewery $36,000 more a year to operate the lights when nobody needs the lights. They didn't even realize that. That's what you find during a treasure hunt. Here's another example where they had a couple air handlers that were not part of this is a different facility, and this one operates nearly 24/7, but their office spaces aren't being used 24/7. They have 3 air handlers that serve the office spaces, and they never had a setback. The office was, the BMS system just considered these spaces on or occupied 24 hours a day. So we got them to be reprogrammed. It cost $0 to reprogram them, and it saved the facility $3,000 to $5,000 a year. Some more examples. Here's a Modine heater being served by a boiler, but this was mid-July, and the Modine heater was never off. Using an IR camera, it helps quite a bit. Compressed air use. This is something that's already been changed, but when we went to this site, this was at Harpoon Brewery, they were using compressed air to blow water off of the necks of these bottles in order to fix the neck label. They had also a typical blower to do the work, but the blower hadn't been working for a while, so they put these on. We showed them the cost of how much compressed air costs versus a blower, and it's usually about 1/10 of the cost. So now these are all off, and they now reuse their blower system. Compressor pressure reduction. This is one of my favorites and easiest things that you can do. Often you'll get a compressor, it'll be ready for 125 PSI, and so that's what it's set at. But if you go along your lines, what does your bottling line need? What does your canning line need? It might only need 80 PSI, and you're using pressure regulators to bring it down. Well, you're wasting energy by making that compressor work harder to get to 120 PSI to then just reduce it to 80. So every 2 PSI that you can reduce the pressure of your compressor supply is about 1% savings on your compressor use. These little things, what are they? If you see them, let's find ways to get rid of them, because these are compressed air coolers. They cool electrical cabinets. Usually you can get a replacement with a a small cooling system that you have like on a computer, and you can get more than or easily a 1-year payback or less. Look around for no insulation. Here's a steam pipe that 15 feet of uninsulated steam pipe. It costs about $350 to put more insulation or put insulation on, and it saved $860. If any of this steam pipe is near where employees walk, it's a huge safety issue. So more importantly here, if this was within touching of any staff, you have to get that insulated. Otherwise, your staff are going to get burned, but you also save some energy doing it. Some condensate drains. These had condensate that went to the brew kettle, but also to the keg washer, and then that condensate was just dripping down a drain. It needs to go back to the boiler. You just heated water and then let it down the drain. Let's not do that. And then compressed air leaks. A leak audit can be done. These are pretty simple and easy to do. Finding compressed air leaks is 6 months or less payback, and you can also find leaks on your CO2 system or nitrogen system with these leak audits. And so rather than paying the CO2 producer for CO2 that then they're going to recharge all the time, go even to their facility, their site, or I'm sorry, the tank that they own, and check for leaks. And if there are any leaks, it's on them to fix the leaks, but you don't want to have to pay for the CO2. And then the final set of examples. This is a no-loss drain. When you're compressing or refrigerating air, it produces moisture and you have to get rid of that moisture. This is just a standard timed drain, and that timed drain doesn't know whether or not there's moisture to get rid of any condensate. Put in a low-cost no-loss drain. It'll provide at least a 1-year payback. Here's a site that had 1100 watt metal halide when it could be replaced with the 360 watt LED. Savings was $600. I'm sorry, the cost was $600, but the savings was within a year. And then use an infrared camera. I have one on my iPhone. It's just made by FLIR or FLIR, and you can see where the steam pipe was uninsulated. And finally, steam trap surveys might be another big, fast win for you. In the top, you can see the temperature where this bullet point is 207 degrees, which is close to 212, which means to me, this side is supposed to be the steam side, the upper left, and then the trap is supposed to only let condensate through. But if condensate's coming out at 270 degrees, or 207, it's really steam. In this case, they replaced the steam trap, and you can see the difference in temperature. The steam is staying where it's supposed to be until it condenses, and then it goes into the steam, it goes through the condensate trap. So again, your resources, you've got the Brewers Association, and then this treasure map that the EPA has provided. Use those to help guide you through the energy treasure map. Here's just the example of one of the pages on there on the Energy Star treasure map. And I want to thank everyone for participating in this Brewing Up Sustainability.
Thanks so much, Pat. Hi, y'all. This is Whitney Lehrer from EPA Region 6, and I'm part of our Microbrew Initiative team out here. And I know we're out of time. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our presenters, Pat, Ed, Danny, and Kaylin, and then, of course, our ERG support staff that is so awesome and helped us put on this webinar today. And, of course, I want to thank all of y'all for attending. I know your time is super valuable, so thank you for giving us 1 hour of it. I hope it was helpful. And then I know we weren't able to get to questions today, but for any follow-up, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. You should find our emails in the chat box, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So thank you guys so much. Happy Energy Star Day. It's also National American Brewing Day. So cheers to all of that. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.